Good morning to everybody online. Can you hear me okay? Thumbs up if you can hear me. Wonderful. So my name is Mike Crandall. I am the speaker for today, and I know you've got a couple of the people from the BBB team online that have kind of been hosting and doing some other stuff. And I'm going to let you know that we're going to spend about 40 minutes, maybe 35 minutes, giving you some content. We're going to use the chat box a couple of different times. If you're not familiar with that, down on the bottom of your screens, you can actually open up the chat box and it allows you to communicate. And we'll be using that for a couple of different things, and then we will save some time for Q&A. So Casey, question for you. When we do Q&A, will I be able to hear people? So.
I mean, I can kind of hear them.
Okay. So we will make sure that we can get the Q&A. So some of this technology and the navigating is a little bit new for some of us. So, but we can all see you. You can communicate with each other, and the chat box is a great thing. A couple of other things. Casey, who's part of the BBB team here, will put my email address into the chat box. And if you would like the slides that I am referencing, I'm not going to show them on the screen, but I do actually have a short slide deck that talks about some of the key points that we're going to talk about today. I am very happy to email that to you. So Casey will put my email in the chat box, and all you would need to do is then email me at that email address and simply put BBB slides in the subject line, and I'll get those emailed to you. There will be a few other offers that we make throughout the session, so feel free to take advantage of those as well. So one of the things that today's talk is about is how do we make sure we're looking at sales the right way? So you've probably already learned that this is what they call one of the Trust Talk series here at the BBB. They've been doing these for quite a few years, and they've asked me to come speak every year that they've done these for the last 5 or 6 years, whatever it's been now. And so the BBB is a great partner of ours. If you're not a BBB member, I encourage you to visit with somebody online about that. Phenomenal organization and a great strategic partner for us. We do a lot of different things together, and a lot of their people that you've met online do things with us as well. So what I want to do to kind of start off is I want to use the chat box for a minute, and I want to ask you, and put it into the chat box, what are some of the key sales challenges that you've seen in the last year that are new or different or have become more of a challenge because of the last 10, 11 months of what's happened to our society with the pandemic and all the other things that that's caused? So into the chat box, put some things in. There's no right or wrong here, but what are some things that are new or different challenges, or what changes have you seen specifically from a sales standpoint? And the reason that this is so important, the reason that I want you to do it in the chat box, is that not everybody experiences the same things. Depending on what your business is, what your target audience is, who your competitor is, what it is you sell, there's lots of different changes. And all of you that are online, whether your camera's on or not, you should be able to see the chat box. And what I'd encourage you to be thinking about is, are those challenges similar or different? Similar or different than what you've maybe experienced before? Similar or different than maybe what you're seeing in your own world? So while I'm waiting for you to put some stuff in, I'll share with you some that we've seen that our clients have struggled with. A lot of it has been things around, and there's all sorts of variables. Getting people's attention has changed. You may or may not know this, but the volume of email has gone up by almost 10x since COVID started. I want you to think about that. So if you were struggling to get your emails replied to or answered to before, the volume of email has gone up almost 10x. What are you doing to take advantage of that and not fall victim to that? Use of social media and marketing has changed. The ways that people search things in Google, the importance of somebody looking you up before they agree to visit with you have changed. And all of these things fill into sales that a lot of times people haven't. So I'm going to share, and you've got them in front of you, but a few that have popped up. So budgets have been cut due to COVID. In some situations that's true, but sometimes that's being used as an excuse. We'll come back to that. How to manage inventory levels and still have a good variety for customers. Again, not everybody's going to have the same things. Maintaining e-commerce presence. Offices closed, visitors are allowed that we're not allowed to get in and see people. And not everybody's going to have the same things, but what I want you to think about is how do we make sure we identify these things so we can work on them in the best way to move opportunities forward. So I'm going to share a few things. I strongly encourage you to take notes if you're in any position that you're able to do that. And I want to start off with this. Sometimes I get asked, why this talk? Now, the official title of this talk is 9 Ways to Improve Your Sales in This New World That We're In. And so that can be now or moving forward, but why this? And what I want you to start to think about, and for those of you that are taking notes, this is probably one of the most important notes that you can make. 2 simple words. What if? What if? Now, why those 2 words? One of the things that we find so frequently is that we're not asking ourselves, what if? Tons of things have changed in the last 10, 11 months since COVID landed, for lack of better terms, or since it became well-known and widely impacting the things that we do in our lives. But here's why what if. What if your thoughts are wrong? What if the things that you think are right aren't? What if what you're doing is causing more harm than good? And I really want you to think about what if. There's a thing that we use in my organization, and for those of you that might not be familiar with what we do at Sandler, or maybe aren't familiar with me, we really do 3 levels of things with clients. The base level that everybody looks for when they do things with an organization like ours is they want different interactions. They want different interactions. They want different interactions with prospects. They want different interactions with clients. They want different interactions with prospective members or volunteers or donors. For people in leadership and management, they want different interactions with the people that are part of their team. But to get different interactions, we have to change our actions. So above interactions is our actions. What are we doing or not doing that's helping the interaction? And in order for us to change our actions, we need to change our thoughts. All growth, all improvement, all change starts with what goes on in your mind. And mindset becomes a gargantuan part of this. Is my mindset set up to help me or hurt me? Are my beliefs helping me or hurting me? So I'll just give you an example, and this is not to pick on anybody, but somebody put into the chat box that budgets have been cut. In some situations that is true, but I will share with you that it is being used as an excuse more than anything. If you actually look at businesses, there are lots of businesses, and not just ones that sell masks and hand sanitizer, that are thriving right now. I visited with a company recently that I want you to think about this. In 2019, they spent over $250,000 on parking for their sales reps to make calls. Now, it's a larger organization. In 2019, they spent over $250,000 on parking alone. In 2020, that was less than $10,000. There's $240,000 that they saved in their budget. By the way, their total revenue was up year over year. But I asked the CEO, what is the number one thing that you tell salespeople that call on you? He said, I tell them our budgets are cut because of COVID. Their revenue is up. They're saving money on all sorts of things. They made more money than they've ever made. And the CEO is literally still using, and he admitted this to me in a closed door meeting, that budgets are cut, money is tight as an excuse. What we have to understand in sales and sales management and sales leadership, for those of you that are higher levels, is that sometimes it's true, but sometimes it's not. And what we need to do is we need to make sure that we look at things. For those of you that are taking notes, I want you to write down 3 words really quickly. And these will be key words for us to build on today. Those 3 words are embrace. Second key word is blend. And the third key word is defend. Embrace, blend, defend. Now, what are these 3 key words? These 3 key words are the only things, and I want to emphasize that word, the only things that our subconscious minds can do with information. They're the only 3 things that our subconscious mind can do with information. So here's what happens. I receive new information. I read something, I watch it, I hear it, I attend a workshop like this, and I hear and see it on a screen or in person for the people that are in the room. And there are things that I immediately embrace, things that I blend, and things that I defend. Now, how does this fit into this new world? Someone says something, and it's easy for us to go, oh yeah, I totally agree with that, totally get it. Absolutely. That's the embrace. The blend is, yeah, I kind of get that. I've seen that before. I heard that before. My friend said that before. The third thing is that we defend against it. And what defend against it means isn't that I put up my fists to fight occasionally, but most of it is that in my mind I go, nope, don't believe it, not true, doesn't fit my world. What I want you to understand is that our natural position is defend. We defend, for those of you that like numbers, feel free to write this down, we defend 60 to 90% of all new information we take in. 60 to 90%. So when I tell you that we've got clients that doubled their business between 2019 and 2020, even without selling hand sanitizer and masks, some of you immediately go, no way, not possible, because you defend against it. And other ones look at maybe, possibly, some of you blend, and some of you are like, oh yeah, I can totally see that. Some of you embrace. And here's what I want you to do, because there's 3 places, and this fits sales so importantly. There's 3 places that this embrace, blend, defend is crucially important. And for those of you that are taking notes, really want you to take these notes down. 3 places this is super dangerous. Danger area number 1, internal communication. So when some person on the team says to somebody else on the team something, embrace, blend, defend is at play. So sales manager says to sales rep, or sales rep says to manager something, embrace, blend, defend is at play. We see it play out all the time, every day in different things that we do. The second, and even more dangerous, is external communications. External communications is all of our sales, all of our marketing, all of our advertising, all of the messaging that we send outside of our company. We need to know that the receivers, the people that are receiving that information, are going to embrace, blend, or defend it. So when I tell you that, hey, we're number 1, we're the best, we've got great customer service, people are literally embracing, blending, and defending it. Now, the third dangerous place that this happens is when we individually, each of you and myself, individually receive information. There are things that we immediately embrace and go, yeah, absolutely. There's things that we blend and we go, yeah, kind of. And there's things that we go, no, don't believe it, not going to work, not going to fit in my world. That's the most dangerous place. Now, why do I talk about that before I get into some specific bullet points and things you can build on? Is that I'm going to share 9 specific things you can be doing right now. And some of you are going to want to defend against them before you ever process the information. Let me say that again. Some of you are going to want to defend against it before you even process the information. So if I say, hey, here's something you can do, and you defend against it before you even process it, it'll never help you. So let's peel this back a little bit farther. And one of the things that I really want you to think about, another place you might want to make some notes, is I want you to think about a business. Doesn't matter what the business is. Think about your own business if that helps you. Every business, doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter if it's the BBB or my Sandler training organization, there's only 3 parts to a business. Those 3 parts are selling whatever it is you do. Selling your product, selling your service, selling what you do. Part number 2, delivering what you sell. So delivering the product, installing the product, delivering the service, providing the software, whatever it is. So part number 1 is selling what you do. Part number 2 is delivering what you sell. Part number 3 is the back end, all of the operations and administration. Now here's what I want you to think about. And I want you to use the chat box for a quick second. Of those 3, which is the most important part of a business? Just by your own accord, what do you think is the most important part? Selling what you do, delivering what you sell, or the back-end operations and admin? Which of those is the most important part of your business? So I see some answers already coming in the chat box. Interestingly enough, we have all of those different categories covered in the chat box. Now here's where I want you to think about the embrace, blend, and defend. Because as I share the next part, some of you are going to be fighting every instinct not to defend. The answer is selling what you do. And here's why. There's a phrase that's been around for longer than I've been alive. Nothing happens until somebody sells something. I could have the greatest product in the world. I could have the greatest service in the world. But until somebody sells that, it doesn't matter how great it is. And what I want you to start to wrap your head around is that if we can't agree with that, if we can't wrap our heads around it, we are creating problems we don't even have awareness of. Now, I'm not saying the other parts aren't important, but what I want you to think about is that the vast majority of businesses, sales is the engine that makes every other part of the business happen. Now, here's the next question, and I want you to use the chat box again for this. Remember, the 3 parts are selling what you do, delivering what you sell, and the back-end operations and administration. The last 11 months of COVID and all this craziness that we're in, which of those 3 parts has been impacted in the greatest way? Selling what you do, delivering what you sell, or the back-end operations? Because of COVID, which of those 3, use the chat box, is the most impacted, challenged the most, changed the most because of COVID? Selling what you do, delivering what you sell, or the back-end operations and admin? Which is the most challenged or changed because of COVID? And interestingly enough, we have all 3 answers in the chat box again. Now, this is where there is a little bit of variance based on whatever your business is, but somewhere between 90 and 95% of businesses, if we really look at it through the correct lens, sales has had the greatest impact. Sales has had the greatest challenge. Sales has had to change the most. Now, that doesn't mean just from a revenue, we did good or we did bad, but the day-to-day aspects of it. So let me give you an example. I've got a client that's in the landscape business. So they sell to businesses and homes, and they go out and they do sales. And then they go out and they deliver that service, whatever that is, and then their back-end operations. And I worked with their entire leadership team, and we talked about this. And by the way, most of their leadership team thought that delivery and back-end operations and admin was the most challenged until we dissected it. And all of the owners of the company, there's 3 owners and there's a few key managers at the end of our talk went, we never even paid attention to it. Because yes, installing what they do and delivering that has changed some. They've got to wear masks and they've got to socially distance and they've got to think about who rides with who. But it paled in comparison to the sales aspect of what they do. The salespeople getting the attention of prospects. The salespeople going out and talking to prospects. The salespeople moving opportunities forward. Getting people to say, yes, we trust you enough to come do the project for us. And at the end of the full day of strategic planning that we did around this, they all said, we don't need any help with number 2, delivering what we do. We don't need any help with back-end and operations. We've got to make sure that we maximize everything around sales. And by the way, again, 90 to 95% of businesses, Sales is the single most impacted of those three parts in your business. And if you've never thought about it that way, that's okay, because remember, all change, all growth, all advancement starts with thinking differently. So I want to talk about what are some of the biggest challenges that businesses have had, and then we're going to talk about how do we move things forward. So there's a couple of key issues that really factor into the sales aspect, because this is about sales today, not understanding. And I want you to write down the word awareness. I will share with you, I spend my time working with business owners, business leaders, and top performing salespeople all day, every day. It is amazing how many of them really don't have understanding of where the gap is, of how things have changed around them. They think they do, and then I'll ask them a dozen questions and they'll go, I never even thought about it that way. Key challenge number two, or issue number two, is that we're not learning new ways to do this. We're not learning new technology. We're not learning new approaches. We're not learning how to change and use the things that have changed in the business environment around us for good. Key challenge or issue number three, old thinking. Now, you may or may not be familiar with the term old thinking, but old thinking is really being stuck with what we think has always worked, which usually isn't true. And by the way, chances of it working moving forward are very, very slim. Number four is what we call the sales reality gap. It is amazing how many times when we sit down with a business owner or a leader or somebody in sales and we start talking about where are you really and where do you want to be and where do you think what's going on? And it's amazing how that gap is so huge. Next big challenge is what we call follow up or follow through. Follow up or follow through. There are new studies out in the last couple of years that say most sales will not happen until we've had somewhere between 6 and 12 touch points with the prospect. I want you to think about that, 6 and 12. It's amazing how I hear people all the time, and some of you do as well. I left them a voicemail, I sent them an email, never heard back. That would be 2 touch points. Most people need between 6 and 12. If we're not getting to at least 6, we're literally quitting before most people even start that are doing well. And then the last one, and this one's painful, and we'll talk a little bit more about it here in a couple minutes, the wrong goals. It is amazing how many organizations we see and we work with and we spend time with or that get referred to us that literally don't have the correct goals. And let me share with you what I mean by that. The correct goals aren't we want to sell 10% more, 20% more, we want to sell to this new market. It's breaking it down to the things that we can control. As an example, if I can't get my voicemail returned, I can't get the meeting to figure out if we should even do business together, it means I can't really work on selling more. So maybe the correct goal is, am I even working on getting my voicemails returned? So here's where we're going to get into 9 specific things. For those of you that are note takers, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on each. And by the way, again, if you want the slides, I'll send you the slides. But these 9 specific things I'm going to spend a little bit of time on, and these are some of the biggest keys that you should be working on right now. Bullet point or number 1, we have to redefine sales. Redefine sales. Now, what do I mean by that? What I'm doing right now, what I've done in the past, what we've historically done, what's always worked, might be wrong, and frankly, probably is. How are we getting in touch with people? How are we getting in front of people? How are we getting their attention? How are we getting them to take action? We need to redefine what the sales process looks like, who's involved, why they're involved, what they're doing. And I'll give you a really quick example around that. I've got a client that's in another state, not here in Oklahoma, and they shared with me that, we kind of dissected their entire process, and I said, well, why don't your people use LinkedIn in this step? And they go, LinkedIn doesn't work in our industry. And I said, why do you think that is? And we were in a conference room, much like I'm in right now, and I said, so who's one of the people that you want to do business with? And they rattled off a name and a company, and I said, let me go to LinkedIn really quick. And I had my laptop, and I typed in on LinkedIn, and I said, well, that's interesting. The CEO of that company's on LinkedIn. But you're telling me that LinkedIn doesn't work in your industry. And what tends to happen is that leaders and salespeople need to redefine what sales is. What does it take to get step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5? And by the way, have I even defined what those steps are? What tends to happen is that we are running around reactively, hoping that people say yes. We're running around doing quotes and bids and proposals, etc. We need to break it down and say, what's the step, and are we maximizing everything there? Number 2, all of these are big keys, but for some of you, this might be the biggest. We need to understand our buyers. And then a subcategory or title in there is that we need to make it super easy for them to do business with us. One of the things that we struggle with is that most of us think about what buyers were like a year ago. They are different today. I've got a client in another state. They sell into the construction industry. And one of the things that they realized that they struggled with is that by state mandate in the state that they're in, job sites are shut down to anybody who's not considered an essential person on the job site. A sales rep walking onto a job site is not considered essential. And that was their primary mode and method of selling. Basically, there's a state law there that says your salespeople are never allowed to make sales calls again. I want you to think about that. And by the way, that might not impact you, but it's impacting the thought process of people in business. There's no greater excuse to keep salespeople out of your office or out of your business than COVID that's ever existed in the history of our world. By the way, if we don't want salespeople on, it's easy to say, hey, we don't allow visitors anymore. But here's what they had to do. They had to understand that those people still need their products and services and understand how can we still get in front of them and how do we make it easy. One of the things that we've helped them do is that sometimes their salespeople are now the delivery drivers, because a delivery driver coming to the job site is considered essential. Now, it's amazing. They finished last year up over double the prior year, and they watched several of their competitors go out of business, and they sell the same products and the same services. The difference was that they redefined sales. They understood their buyers, and they made it super easy for people to do business with them. Number 3, we need to have a defined and actual written sales system or sales process that everybody in the organization knows. Step 1 is this, step 2 is this, step 3 is this, and there's tons of them out there. It's one of the things that we work on tons in our organization. But I will share with you, it is amazing. I did a workshop for a client a couple weeks ago. They had about 24 salespeople, and I had them all go through an exercise. I had everybody take out a blank sheet of paper, and I had them write down the steps in their sales process. 24 people in the room. It was a live event. How many different lists do you think I got back? 24. By the way, the CEO of the company said we have a defined sales process. If they do, nobody knows it. We need a very specific, systematic process that defines here's what step is, step 1 is, step 2, step 3, and everybody in the organization, not just salespeople, should know. Because everybody has eyes and ears. Everybody has a social media account. Everybody has email. Everybody can be watching for opportunities if we think about it differently. Number four, a rock solid, bulletproof, ideal client profile. A rock solid, bulletproof, ideal client profile. Now, for some of you, that's an ideal member profile, an ideal donor profile. For those of you that are in management and leadership, maybe it's an ideal candidate profile. And by the way, a good ideal client profile should take you somewhere between 20 and 50, 20 and 50, 20 and 50 hours to build. It is not a quick list of demographics. It is all about psychographics. What's the wiring of our ideal fit? What are the things that make them tick? How do they make decisions? What information do they process? What matters to them? How do they prioritize? And if we don't have that, we will spend astronomical amounts of time, energy, and money in sales, advertising, and marketing, hoping we're hitting the right things. And if we don't have that ideal fit, we cannot maximize sales, we cannot maximize advertising, we cannot maximize marketing. So number 4 is ideal client profile. Number 5, we call this an engagement, a client engagement strategy. Client engagement strategy. And in our world, we help people learn what we call a CARE, K-A-R-E methodology. K-A-R-E. And here's what CARE stands for. Feel free to make notes. The K is keep. Keep, meaning stuff that I have that I want to keep. The A is attain, meaning things that I don't have but I want to attain. The R is recapture, meaning something that I used to have, I don't today, but I want it back. And the E is expand, meaning something that I have but I want more of. What I want you to do real quick is I just want you to think about your own business. I want you to think about people you sell to. Most of you can drop names of companies or people into each of those. Who are clients that I have that I want to make sure we keep? Who are some that we don't have that we want to go get, that attain? Who are some that we used to do business with, we don't right now, but we want to do business with, that we want to recapture? And who are some that we do some business with, but we want to do more with? And we build out this client engagement strategy. And by the way, each of those is different. When the phone rings and it's somebody who we want to keep, there's a lot of things we will do differently than someone who maybe we want to expand or recapture. A super simple concept that most people in sales have never thought of. I did a workshop for a team last month, fairly new client in our world anyways, and we sat and we went through this CARE model and we spent an 8-hour day dissecting their client list and their prospect list, and we put it into the CARE methodology. And that evening, about 8 o'clock, the owner of the company called me and he said, "Hey, can I get a couple minutes of your time?" And happened to work out, I visited with him, and again, it was about 8 o'clock in the evening, and he said, "Mike," he goes, "that was probably the single most valuable day that we've ever spent in the entire history of our company." And I said, "Why is that?" And he said, "We know all those names. We know that people that are in the K, the A, the R, and the E, but we've never specifically broken them down and then built out a strategy to engage them." He said that is going to change every single aspect of our marketing. It's going to change every single aspect of our advertising and every single aspect of our sales strategy. And by the way, it also helps you build out, what should I be doing every day? And you can fit this into every one of your businesses. Number 6. This one's going to sound really simple. Make it easy for people to do business with you, to find you, to get a hold of you, to understand what it is that you do. I was visiting with a client in another state earlier this morning in a coaching call, and he was telling me about a new product that they've just agreed to bring on. They're in the distribution business. And I said, "So what do you think is going to happen when your salespeople go out and start promoting this new product?" And he said, "Well, I never thought about it." I said, "Do you think that somebody might Google it?" And he got real quiet. And I said, "Somebody's going to Google it. And when they Google it, where do you show up? Because they're going to Google the product because you're introducing it to them." And he said, "I never thought about it." And I said, "Are you sitting in front of your computer?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Why don't you Google the product right now?" He went 10 pages into Google and still hadn't found where it showed up that they represented the product. Nobody's going to look for that product because it's not there. Are we making it easy for people to find us, to connect with us, to buy from us, to sign up, to become a member, to donate, whatever it is? And one of the greatest ways to do this is just ask some of the people that have done business with you in the last year. Did we make it easy or not? How could we have made it easier? Sounds crazy, but it is amazing how many people miss this. Give you a super specific example. If your LinkedIn profile doesn't have your contact info, you're making it hard for people to find you. You're making it hard for people to do business with you. When you're connected with somebody, you have the ability to put all of your contact info in there. If you're not putting it in there, you are immediately making it harder than it should be for people to get a hold of you. Number 7, we call this BAT. BAT. Now, for those of you that are note takers, B stands for behavior. Behavior. A stands for attitude. Attitude. And T stands for technique. B-A-T. Now, what does that mean? Am I looking at what I need to be successful from a behavior standpoint, an attitude standpoint, and a technique standpoint? We are wired as adult humans that we are always looking for the magic quick fix. Just tell me what question to ask. Until I change my behavior and my attitude, it doesn't matter if you have the question. It doesn't matter if you have the technique. So here's an example. Behavior is things we do or don't do. Our clients learn how to build out what we call a prospecting cookbook. A prospecting cookbook is daily, weekly, monthly activities that we need to modify our behaviors to do. It might be things like number of things we comment on LinkedIn, number of cold calls we make, number of times we ask for a referral, number of times we send a handwritten thank you card. Those are specific behaviors and activities that I can do. And until we break that down, until we break it down to the very specific things that we do, we will never reach our maximum potential. If you think about elite athletes, this is what elite athletes do. Elite athletes break it down to the most minute specific thing, the angle of their hand, the direction of their eyes, the position of their feet. In sales, we just say, go make more calls. As crazy as that sounds. Number 8. I've referenced this one a couple times, but it's a specific bullet point. Number 8. We need to align, bring together all of our sales and marketing messaging. It is amazing how many organizations have ads out there or marketing messaging or social media posts that create an expectation. And then when they finally get to your place or they finally pick up the phone and they visit with a human, it all falls apart because our sales process and our marketing process and the messaging in those is not aligned. When someone finally visits with you or exchanges information from you, are they getting the exact experience and the exact journey that we've broadcast? As someone who worked for large corporations for most of my career until 11 years ago when I started as a Sandler coach, I will share with you that one of the greatest areas of waste in every organization I worked from was the amount of infighting that sales and marketing did. Sales would blame all of their problems on marketing, and marketing would blame all of their problems on sales. Sales reps would say, if you had a better promotion, we could have sold more. And then the marketing people would say, well, if you were better salespeople, we wouldn't need promotions. It is amazing how the concept of this aligning them is simple, but it's not easy. We need to do it for internal benefits and external benefits. Number 9, possibly the most important, maybe for you, maybe not. But number 9 is prospecting. Have we refined every aspect of our prospecting? Sales is the key of those 3 areas in your business, and all sales start with prospecting. Have we pivoted and changed and adjusted our prospecting to fit the new world? Somebody put in the thing earlier that I thought was really powerful that, hey, a lot of the people we call on aren't in their offices. How have I changed my prospecting to still get phone calls, appointments, Zoom meetings, whatever it is? I might not be able to get on the job sites because in some states there's different rules and restrictions. We're pretty fortunate here in Oklahoma that we're far more open than some states. But we have to make sure that we're looking at prospecting from a very different lens. And then we're leveraging technology. Let me share with you a story about how quickly people screw this up. My wife and I own multiple businesses. Sandler is one of them. One of the businesses that we own is a school photography business. And there's a software that we needed to buy for that last year, some new software. And so my wife spends a lot of time running that business. And so she reached out to a couple of different companies, and some of them never got back to her. So clearly opportunities for improvement. The one that she really wanted, and I want you to think about how all these 9 things tie together here. The one that she really wanted, they scheduled a Zoom meeting with her. And I want you to think about little things that we control and how sales have changed. Prior to COVID, that would have been a live meeting with people coming in to do a demo face-to-face. Doesn't exist right now for a lot of different reasons. So they said, hey, we'll hop on Zoom. And they sent her an invite to join the Zoom meeting. And she joined the Zoom meeting, and she logged in, she turned her camera on, she turned her microphone on, and 3 people from the other company joined. And none of them turned their cameras on. And within 30 seconds, she decided she would not do business with them. Because they didn't make it easy, they didn't make it comfortable, they didn't maximize the opportunity. And then they went in and their sales and marketing messaging was very misaligned. The amount of business opportunity that people are missing right now because they aren't doing the right things in the right order, in the right way, is the highest it has ever been in the history of our country. Are you focusing on the right things? Have you rethought your sales process? So a couple of bullet points, and then I'm going to save a little bit of time for Q&A. I want you to write down 3 bullets because these might be the most important 3 bullets for you today. Number 1, plan. Number 2, prepare. Number 3, practice. Plan, prepare, practice. In my world as a Sandler coach, we call that the 3 Ps. If I want to be better at sales, am I spending time to plan? Am I spending time to prepare? And then am I practicing? Remember, sales is the engine that drives your business. It doesn't matter how good my product or service is if I can't sell it. Am I planning, preparing, practicing? If you've got a Zoom sales meeting with somebody this afternoon that could be a prospect for your business, have I planned? Have I prepared? Have I practiced? If I've got to make cold calls tomorrow morning to call people to try and get those meetings or those return phone calls or that interest, have I planned? Have I prepared? Have I practiced? What we've got to make sure that we do is that we focus on the right things in the right order. That sounds crazy simple, but we miss it. So in about another minute, I'm going to open it up for some Q&A. I'm going to ask Casey to kind of help with that because I might not be able to help and can't always see every single thing on the screen. But before Q&A, I just want you to write down 4 things that are very specific things you can be working on that will help you immediately. Number 1, a sales playbook. If your organization has not already built and follows a sales playbook, you should. And if you've got one, you should make sure that it's updated and modified for all of the best practices now that we're in a new world. And by the way, a playbook, if you're not familiar with what that is, a playbook by definition is a collection of best practices. Playbooks are super common in sports. They need to be common in sales. When we're talking to someone like this, here's a best practice. When we're calling on a company like this, here's our best practices. Here's the 7 steps we've got the greatest success with to get someone like this to say yes. Number 2 is a prospecting cookbook. Probably an easy concept, but not a simple thing to do, or a simple concept, but not easy to do. A cookbook for prospecting is simply, what do I need to do every day? What do I need to do every week? What do I need to do every month? And why do we say daily, weekly, monthly? Is there some things I should do every day? There's some things that I should do weekly. There's some things I should do monthly. But it's what are those specific activities, and have I broken those down so I can figure out which ones work, which ones don't, and maximize every step. Number 3, a pre-brief process. One of the offers that I will make, and my email should already be in the chat box, but Casey can put it in again if we need to, is to send you what we call our pre-call planner form. And all it is a form that I should fill out before a sales meeting, before a sales call, that allows me to make sure I'm ready. It's a simple form that doesn't take very long to fill in, but I will share with you, it's amazing how we run into sales calls without planning, preparing, practicing. So we call that the pre-call planner form. It's our pre-brief process. It's how do we get ready for the meeting. And then number 4, some of you might have already figured this out based on number 3, is a debrief process. How do we debrief so we learn lessons? How do we make sure that if we're going to go take steps forward, we're not making the same mistakes over and over and over again? I want you to think about the profession of a surgeon, a doctor, a surgeon who's in the medical industry. Before a doctor does a surgery, now it depends a little bit on the surgery, they will often spend somewhere between 2 and 6 hours preparing for one specific surgery. They study charts, they look at x-rays, they look at other stuff, and they prepare and they mentally prepare and they practice. Some doctors have stretching routines and all the other things that they do. But we get into sales, and it is amazing how we spend sometimes 0 time preparing. And then we get to the back end and we spend 0 time debriefing. So those 4 bullet points of things you can immediately start working on: sales playbook, prospecting cookbook, pre-brief process, debrief process. If you want our pre-call planner form and our call debrief form, you can send me an email for that. My email's already been put into the chat box again. And just put in that, put BBB Sandler pre-call form or something that indicates it, but put BBB because that's how I'll find the email way easier, because I average 200 to 300 emails a day. So if you don't put BBB in the subject line, odds are you'll never hear back from me because I might not read the email. What I want you to think about more than anything is, what are you going to do with the stuff today? I'm going to open it up to Q&A, but here's what I want you to do as we open up to Q&A. I want you to type into the chat box 2 or 3 things you're going to do or work on or at least explore from today. Maybe it's that client engagement strategy. Maybe it's redefining our sales process. Maybe it's looking at prospecting cookbooks. I don't know what it is. Maybe the thing you write down is that I'm going to reach out to Mike and get some of the tools that he offered up. But what are a few of the things that you're going to do or work on from today? So 2 or 3 into the chat box. And as you're taking some time to do that, I'm also going to open it up for some Q&A. By the clock in front of me, we've got about 13 or 14 minutes in the time that we'd allotted, and want to be respectful of your time, so we'll be done on time. But what are some questions that you've got of me? And please keep writing into the chat box, what are 2 or 3 things you're going to do from today? Again, think about that as a commitment you're making to yourself. I'm going to do this. I'm going to ask some people why they chose to do business with us. I don't care what it is, but what are a couple of those things? So what are some questions that we have? Casey, I know you're going to monitor this. So, and by the way, people in the room can ask questions as well. There's some people in the room.
We did have a question come through. How do we reach people that need us before they need us?
Sure. So it's a great question. So the question was, how do we reach people that need us before they need us? Now, there's a few things that I don't know there. Obviously, I don't know the product, the service, the industry, and you don't have to share that. But when we break down prospecting, and this is a good part of it, is that we like to say prospecting is really 3 parts. Who do I want to talk to? And that's super specific by names and companies and job titles and things like that. And then the second part is, how do we start the conversation with them? So I want to really visit with people that make the IT decisions in companies of this size. Now I've got specific, well then how do I get in front of them? And that's where it could mean 1,000 different ways, because without knowing the product, the service, the industry, the competitor, the geography, but a lot of times we've got to think about that. What gets people's attention? I'll give you a few examples that are sometimes super helpful. White papers that people can download that give them some tools and resources and ideas to help themselves that they download that we can now then follow up with. A lot of times a way to get in front of people that might need you before they need you are events. Maybe we do a free event, maybe we do something like this that says, hey, we're going to do a 30-minute Zoom workshop on whatever the topic is, and we invite people to that. I want to share with you something that maybe you haven't thought about, but it is easier to get contact information when we offer stuff up now than it's ever been before. If I'm going to do something on Zoom, I can offer up stuff, and what do people have to give me bare minimum to get in? An email address. It's amazing how many times I can get an email address, I can get a cell phone number, I can get all sorts of information that I couldn't get before COVID. We did something to let people sign up last week, and I did something as a very specific test. We built a form that people had to register for, and we required name, and we required company, and required email address, and then we put a box in for cell phone number, but we did not require it. 52 of 54 people that filled out that phone put their cell phone number in there. I want you, don't miss that point. 52 of 54 people, even though it wasn't required, put their cell phone number in there. Now, there was value because they were excited to get the offer that we threw out there, but people are willing to cough up information way differently now than they were 11 months ago. So to that question, without knowing the product or the service, there's a few different things. What are some other questions? We've got 9 or 10 minutes left, and I'm happy to answer anything.
What are the biggest mistakes you see organizations making in this environment?
Sure. Well, I think the single biggest one that I see is people not adjusting their process. They're trying to do the same things they did a year ago before COVID happened. And it seems crazy simple to say I've got to redefine my sales process and I've got to rethink sales, but there are things today that I can't do the same way. There was something in the chat box earlier about lots of people we call on aren't in the office. Well, if everything I did before was I went and I knocked on their door and I got into their office and they're not there, I've got to do it differently. And I can't just sit around and say, well, hopefully they'll be open next week, because they might not. They might not ever be open again based on lots of things that are happening in the world. So I think that's the biggest mistake. The second biggest one that I see is not learning to embrace technology to get in front of prospects and leverage opportunities with prospects along the way. You need to learn how to sell on Zoom. It's not an option. It's not something that's a nice to do. It is mandatory. How do I develop bonding and rapport through a screen? How do I get people to be comfortable enough to go from no to like to trust to value with me through other things? I'll share with you an example of technology, and I referenced it a couple times, LinkedIn. We can develop tremendous relationships and credibility by the things we do or don't do on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the most important platform for connecting with people in the business world right now. It was important a year ago. It's magnified tremendously. Keep in mind, if I leave a message for somebody and I say, hey, it's Mike with Sandler Training, call me back. If they don't know me or they don't know my company, there are two things that people do. And by the way, there's hundreds of surveys that have shown this. If they don't know me and they're thinking about calling back, two things they will do. They will look me up online. They will look my company up online. And if you haven't thought about that, maybe that's a big takeaway for you, because what shows up? If someone types your name into Google, what shows up? If somebody types your company into Google, what shows up? And by the way, the reason that I reference LinkedIn so much is even if you own the website that matches your name, you will never get ahead of the Google search where your LinkedIn profile shows up. Because Google's analytics are driven by content creation and uploading. There's no way you could put more content into your own website than LinkedIn does. If you type my name into Google, my LinkedIn profile and my website and places that I've spoken will fill the first several pages. But number one, 100 out of 100 times is my LinkedIn profile. So am I leveraging technology and am I using all these things that people are using that I might not even know? We've got time for probably 2 or 3 more questions, depending on how detailed or complex they are. So anybody in the room have a question?
What have you seen that's really successful, maybe that businesses should be trying, other than some of the things that you mentioned?
Sure. Well, I think that we've really got to focus on who do we need to get in front of and what's it going to take. So there's some variables by industry, but we've got to do things that stand out. And here's a few things that we've seen. I'll just give you a couple of examples. Video messaging embedded into your sales process. We've got a client of ours and a strategic partner that's an organization called Vidyard, Vidyard. And if you want a free trial of that, send me a message. They let people who are working with us or familiar with us get some free trials of some stuff. But it is amazing. If I send you just an email, Casey, you may or may not read it. But if I send you an email with an embedded video that's personalized and customized to you, and when you open it, you see a GIF of me waving and maybe holding up a sign that says, hey, Casey, it's amazing how people will open that. Now, I've got to be an awesome communicator when you open it, because if I sound like a traditional salesperson, it'll get closed and deleted right away. But we've got to find ways to get people's attention that are different. Mailing stuff to people is crucial right now. People are checking their mail more and better than ever. Now, if they're not in the office, I've got to get their home address. So I might need a strategy to say, hey, Casey, there's something that I really wanted to mail you. What's the best address to get something to you today? And I will tell you that it is amazing how many times people will cough up their home address if they're working from home. And by the way, everybody's checking their mail if they work from home every day now. Before COVID, sometimes people only check their mail every week or two, depending on their mailbox and situation. But mailing things that get people's attention, personal invitations to things. So it's amazing how that is. I'll share with you one, and this sounds crazy, but I've got tons of clients that we work with that luncheons were one of the most important things that they did. Well, depending on comfort zones and states and all sorts of other things, that might not work today. But they have found in one of the cookbook items for all their salespeople is 2 virtual luncheons every week. And here's the way that they work. So if it's Drew might get a message from me that says, hey, Drew, I know you're probably sick of working from home, but can't get out yet, or maybe you aren't comfortable getting out yet. I'd love to buy you lunch. I know you don't want to go out, so if you're willing to pick out a day and a time, I will have your favorite lunch delivered to you, and we'll hop on just a quick 30-minute Zoom. I'll have the same thing delivered to me if you agree to take that 30 minutes. And by the way, it is amazing. They have shared with me that 95% of the people they invite to that, 95% accept. Because I'm making it super easy for you. I'm going to have it delivered to your house. What would you like? Oh, I'd like whatever restaurant. Okay, great. And in between Grubhub and all these other places, I can have it delivered in most situations. And some people might live a little bit out of that. But now you've agreed to give me 30 minutes. Now, I shouldn't make that just a 30-minute sales pitch. But a lot of times then I say, well, so Drew, I'm curious, why did you agree to this? You know what they hear? Probably 8 out of 10 times. Because I'm sick of sitting at home. I wanted to see somebody else. And I just wanted to share a meal with somebody that isn't part of my family I live with, because I'm kind of sick of it. And I don't know what you'll hear and see, and it may not work for you, but those are some things that we've seen that had totally changed. Because by the way, nobody would have bought somebody a Zoom lunch before COVID. I mean, we just wouldn't have even thought about it. But here's the interesting thing. If I took you to lunch before COVID, I want you to think about how we had to work schedules. Oh, I can't do that day, or that's too far away, or not there. And if I invite you to a Zoom lunch, it's a lot of times easier to schedule. We can do something in 30 minutes that would have taken 60 or 90 somewhere else. And guess what? We're hyper-focused on each other because it's just the two of us. If we're sitting at a restaurant and the waitress is coming over checking on us, and background noise and somebody screaming kid is behind you, we're not really focused, but on Zoom we are. And that doesn't fit everybody's world, but it's an example of one of the many things that we've seen people put into their sales process that didn't exist a year ago. So I show that we have 1 minute left, and our goal is to always be respectful of your time. So I want to wrap up with just a couple of quick things. One, I want to thank Casey and Jake and everybody here at the BBB for having me speak at this event. And they're a phenomenal organization. If you're not a member, strongly encourage you to visit with somebody about membership. I know that a ton of their people are dialed in, and they're more than happy to visit with you and see if membership might be a good fit for your organization or you. Second thing is that remember the offers that I made, and you can email me. One is to get the slides from today. My email's in the chat. Feel free to email that. When Casey, can you send out a follow-up email to everybody that was here? So Casey will send out a follow-up email that will also have my email address in it. So I offered up the slides you can email me for. I also offered up that pre-call planner tool and the call debrief tool. And I'm happy to share any of those. And I know that Casey asked me for some other things that we're doing, so there's a lot of resources that we have. I'm also happy to have someone from my team or me visit with you if you think we might be able to help you. Our world is helping people with leadership, management, and sales improve processes and results. And today was primarily about sales, but by the way, most of these things also fit into leadership. So happy to visit with you. Happy to have someone on my team visit with you if you want. You'll have my contact info. You're also welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. If you connect with me on LinkedIn, I do have a request. In the invite, send that, hey, I met you or saw you at the BBB talk, because I get dozens of requests to connect. And if I don't know who you are or I don't know where it's from, I won't accept it because I don't want a whole bunch of people I'm connected to that I have no idea how we cross paths. So feel free to reach out and share those things. If you got value out of today, I would ask that you say something nice on social media about the BBB and the work that they do for putting things like this together. And if you're so inclined, say something nice about my organization, Sandler Training of Oklahoma, and or myself. You can find us on all the main social media platforms, and I know the BBB appreciates that, as do I. So I want to say thank you. I know Casey is going to send out some follow-up, and Casey at the BBB, who's been communicating with you, is a great point of contact for all sorts of different things. If we can help you with anything, or if the BBB can help you with anything, let us know. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Have a great rest of your week. Go sell somebody something.